Wow, that's the shortest turnaround time I think I've ever done between live streams. I barely had like a minute to go and get myself a drink. And I'm back. So hello everybody, welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. I'm Bill, the company's expert. Thank you for joining me here today. Yeah, head's kind of spinning because we were just on a live stream and it ended like 2 minutes ago. Anyway, welcome to Honest HR Nitrous. This is the live stream I do several times a week actually. Where we talk about job search and hiring, but the gritty reality of it, not the theory about what you're supposed to do, but the reality of what ends up actually happening. You know, the ghosting, the fake jobs, all that kind of stuff. That's what we talk about. And, you know, how to get hired and what to do about it, basically. So the title of this episode is Hiring is Broken. Let's talk about how to beat it. Live Q&A. And this is episode 84 of Honest HR Nitrous, if you are just joining me for the first time. As always, a shout out goes out to my YouTube channel members, my Patreons, my Super Thanks donors, and to you, my participants. Thank you for being here. You are awesome. And I see there's 14 people here already. Thank you for being here. If you can see my beautiful face, you should be able to see a chat box somewhere in the vicinity of my face. Depending on what device you are watching this on. If you've been a subscriber to my channel for any amount of time, you should be able to get in there and let me know what's up with you, what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out. Unless, of course, you are watching this on a TV, in which case you're shit out of luck. I don't think there's any way to interact, like to type in chat questions if you're watching it on a TV. If you watch YouTube on a TV, let me know. Because I've never had that pleasure. So you can tell me if that's possible to do. But my understanding is it isn't. And I mentioned my channel members. Membership has its privileges. Thank you to my members. You guys are awesome. Okay, let's get into this. So in order for this to work, I need you to ask me some questions. So get into the chat and let me know what's up with you. We were talking about a bunch of things just now. You know, all kinds of things related to how to get a job and stuff. But, you know, the title, Hiring is Broken. This is true. And it's true because what you're seeing, you know, with the post-job market is you're seeing a tiny subset of how people get hired. Most people don't actually get a job that way. And, you know, that's the reality of it. It's been like that for a very, very long time, and it's not going to change anytime soon. The thing with hiring strangers is that you only kind of do it as a last resort, because in terms of the likelihood of a candidate working out, it's much more likely that someone that you're already familiar with, that's a known quantity, like an existing employee or something like that, you already know what you're getting. You've worked with them, you've seen their abilities, you've seen their personality, you've seen them under stress, right? You know, and you've seen their longevity. So you're not guessing about those things, right? So all things being equal, that person will be a much safer bet than an external candidate that's a stranger, right? But as we all know, it isn't always possible to hire someone internally. And the other thing is, when you hire internally, you're not actually solving the problem, because if you're moving an employee up or you're moving them sideways into a position to fill a hole, you're creating a hole where they came from, right? So you're not actually really improving anything. You're just moving people around, and it's not really solving anything. So it's not a permanent solution. John is here. Congratulations, John. You win the prize of being the first person in the chat for this new stream. John says, you can view the chat, not chat though, on a TV. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's what I would assume was the case. You don't have a little keypad on your remote. It might be possible to do like a voice input type thing, possibly. I'm not sure. Maybe that'll happen in the future. How do you say this? Naisha Hill? I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. I specialize in saying people's names wrong. It's not personal. Says, I have an interview for a senior trainer next week, and it's an internal interview. Okay, so do you know the interviewer? Like, have you worked with the interviewer before? You're on good terms with them, or are they still like someone you don't know? Even though they're in your organization. Anyway, I wish you best of luck with that. Yeah, get in the chat. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with. I'm here to help you if you are between jobs, to try and provide some clarity to this process, what you can do. There's a lot of people that are confused as to what to do. I have to adjust my camera brightness because I have to reboot my computer between streams. And so unfortunately I do it, and then all my settings go haywire because it's that level of technological sophistication that I have. I just want you to know. There we go. That's okay, I guess. I don't know. Hopefully it's fine. Nasha says, yes, you were right. I was right about what? The pronunciation of your name, or the fact that you know this person? Or no, I guess I have not worked with them. Okay, so it's still like you're doing an external interview in a sense. Well, it would be nice if you could capitalize on the fact that you're already an employee. Like if there's a hiring manager or like that they know your boss or something, you know what I mean? Like that would be nice if they could recommend you. What might be useful, I'm not sure if it's too late to do this. You say this is happening next week, but what would be possibly something is if you could go to your boss if they know you're leaving and if they're okay you're leaving. I'm not sure if either of those conditions are met, but if they are, you could say, would you be able to write me a brief letter of recommendation? Do you think you might be able to do that? And then you could present that right to these people. And that might carry some weight, right? What's more likely in these situations is that your boss isn't aware you're interviewing. I just thought that because it's an internal interview, it's a higher likelihood that your boss realizes that you're interviewing for this other position. But I don't know. Yeah, get in the chat. Let me know what you guys are wondering about. Do you feel that hiring is broken? What's been your experience? Or is it completely above board? I would agree that hiring, certainly sort of official hiring mechanisms are, I don't know if they're broken, but they're certainly handled very poorly. Very poorly. If ever you've wondered why that is, here's some reality for you. Number one, worker level jobs, they really don't care that much about. The attitude, especially in larger organizations, is that, people at the worker level, it's no big deal. You hire someone, you don't really know if they're good or not. You take your best guess, but, you see if they work out or not. And if they don't work out, oh well, you just, let them go and then you replace them with someone else. Big deal, right? That's the prevailing attitude. And so as a result, HR is, they look at their recruitment and selection process in terms of efficiency, right? How can we do the things that we're told to do, hire people, fill positions, in the most efficient way possible, right? And, I've always kind of marveled at this because, HR has been very, very schizophrenic for a very long time. The study of HR has been very schizophrenic. One school of thought wants to treat you like a resource, like a number, not as a human being. You're a resource like any other resource, like inventory, like energy, like capital, like cash. You have employees, right? Very impersonal. You're treated like cattle. And on the other hand, they want to treat you like a human being. People, they care about your motivations and your, ability to create a respectful environment and, to get along with everybody else and foster the right kind of climate of opinion atmosphere, a spirit of negotiation, a spirit of collaboration, and open, free communication, and this kind of thing. It's very psychological, because they're treating you like a human being. And they have never, ever, since the 1970s, they've never, ever been able to make up their mind which one is it. You know what I mean? And so these two things kind of coexist. And we see that every day in a lot of companies where, one moment they'll try and treat you like a human being, and then the next moment they'll treat you like a number, and they keep yo-yoing back and forth, right? So there you go. Anyway, I'm losing people here. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm here to answer your questions about the hiring process, about job search, if you have anything. If you do, I'm here to answer questions. You guys let me know what you, are interested in exploring. Anyway, what I was going to go on to say was, if you contrast the process between hiring workers and hiring management, at least senior management, like where it's important, it's a night and day difference. And that's because with senior management roles, you have to get it right. You can't take a chance on people. It's not a matter of efficiency. It's a matter of getting it right. You must get it right. Because if you put the wrong person in there, they can do incredible damage. It's possible to take an entire division of the company and with one wrong hire, like some senior manager somewhere. Not only can you ensure that the revenue stream from that division or that business unit stops dead, like it's becomes zero for the next several months, but you can alienate all your customers permanently. You can destroy the brand equity of the company for those customers permanently. Those customers are gone and they're never coming back. It is possible to do that with one wrong hire in a senior position. That's not like hiring the wrong technician or, customer service rep or someone like that. You know what I mean? Nisha says, I work for a large company of 10,000 employees, and I've held several roles over the last decade, and the hiring process takes so long. Yeah, the question is it effective, though, in your opinion? It's taking long? Is the fact that it's long and perhaps cumbersome, is that producing results? Yeah. You see, the other thing about large organizations is that, generally speaking, large organizations promote a culture of cover your butt. Like you have the senior people, and then you have like sort of a layer under that, and it goes down to a certain point, and there's like a certain level where everyone under that level, below that level, they don't have any initiative. Everything they do centers around covering their butt so they can't be blamed for something that goes wrong. Like, usually it manifests itself in you have like buildings full of people sending emails to each other. They're not doing actual work. They're just sending emails to each other all day long, because everything that they communicate has to be documented, usually in the form of an email. They can't just say something. They have to put it in writing. And the entire reason for that a lot of times is because they don't want to be misquoted or accused of something later that they then have to defend themselves against, and they can't produce any receipts essentially to say, nope, that's not what I said. I said this. Here's the proof. They like to copy their bosses and their bosses' bosses on every email they send. And it's like, oh, well, you were told, you can't blame me if it's the wrong call. I did tell you at the time and you didn't object to it. It's that kind of culture, right? The managers do not want these employees taking initiative. They need them to ask for permission to do the most basic things imaginable. And that really is what drives inefficiency at large organizations. They have economies of scale that work in their favor, but they also have this organizational mire that works against them. And so in the end, you almost get like you're on par with small companies in a lot of ways. Because smaller companies, you don't have that. You, generally speaking, have a culture where, the boss can't stand over the shoulder of all the employees, and supervise them all the time. So they have to trust their employees. You tell your employee, okay, you go and you do this thing where I won't be able to see you, but you go get it done, right? You have to trust the employee, right? You also have to trust the employee that they will take initiative to do things that need to be done. And you don't have formal policies and rules on everything in a small company, right? You got to sometimes just, run with it. So it's generally speaking, it's a completely different culture, And why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because Nitrous was talking about the hiring process being so long, right? And one of the reasons why we see that is because people are so afraid of making a call. No one wants to be the person that said hire them, because if there's one person that's responsible for that and that person they hired ends up not working out, then it's this person's fault because it was them that hired them. Instead, they like to make all their decisions by committee. They like to have it validated, like we were talking about just like 10 minutes ago in a previous live stream. They like to have it validated by psychometrics and all kinds of aptitude tests so they can say, hey, wasn't my fault they worked out, even though I chose them. The test said that they would be good, so you can't blame me, right? It's very much a cover your ass type culture. And, looking at things like this, it can signal how they operate internally. Like when you're looking at a company from outside, you don't know who these people are, you don't know how they operate, but you can see certain things they do that are visible externally, like how long their hiring process is. You can sometimes make educated guesses on what their culture is like. So that's what I would say in this case, Nisha. Without knowing anything else, that would be what my guess is. The size of the company and a long hiring process, yep, that's what it's very much a culture of. You can tell me if that's accurate, but that would be my guess if I didn't know anything else. Joshua says, hi Bill, how's ChatGPT ATS different from others, as in the ATS used by the company you're applying to? What do you mean by ChatGPT ATS? You mean like ATS that has AI built in? Is that what you're talking about? It's just another flavor of the same thing. It's got the same purpose. It's there to make decisions on what on the ranking of the applications that they've received, right? So they'll rank things that look more promising towards the top. They'll rank things that look less promising towards the bottom, and then when the recruiter comes to follow up to do the next stage, like an interview or something with the candidates, they'll pick the people from the top, and however many they're doing, they'll pick the top 10 or the top 6 or whatever it is. Right. So, I don't work with it, so I don't know if it's really, there's any real difference, but these tools are only as good as the people using them. That's the thing, right? ChatGPT is an amazing, amazing tool. It can unlock so many things for you, but if you don't know how to use it and you're not using it for a lot of things that it's awesome at, it's not going to perform very well, obviously, right? So it depends on how they're used and how they're set up. And when it comes to people's level of IT savvy among HR people, generally it's not good, Like the IT people can supply the tools, but the IT people can't use the tools to say, the IT person that sets up the ATS system installs it, maintains it, turns on all the functionality, maybe does a course in it or training in it for the HR employees who are going to be using it. The IT person doesn't know how best to set up the system to find better candidates that will have a better likelihood of working out at this employer. They won't know that. The HR person is supposed to be the expert in using the tool for that, right? So you've got this knowledge that's spread across two departments, right? And that's where the problems lie. And that's why the end result is actually usually pretty crappy, because it gets lost in that handover between the IT department and the HR department. Not always the case, but that's the challenge anyway. So that's the thing. And with increasing complexity, like now you're using something like ChatGPT or some other AI to determine the criteria or detect the criteria. Like if you program in the rules manually or you rely on its judgment, whichever way you do it, and like you tell it kind of what the criteria is, and then it just detects it. That's a different thing. You know what I mean? It's only as good as how you've set it up. So that's the thing. So there's too many factors in there to really say like it's better or it's worse. That's kind of the challenges. How's that for a long-winding, rambling trip to nowhere? Joshua says, I'm curious because of late I parse my resume through ChatGPT and I get higher scores in the 85% on average, yet on my application do not pass the application. Yeah, there's no like one way of determining somebody's suitability for a job. Like, I don't know if you've noticed that, but every employer, they go about hiring differently, right? Their judgment, like what traits they look for, what requirements they look for, the weighting, what experience they look for, how they regard certain experiences or certain education, that varies quite a bit. Even if you're going for the same role in the same industry, you know what I mean? Different employers will evaluate you differently. It's one of the things that they can do that's part of their competitive edge. They can hire certain types of people, Maybe their competitors put a lot of value in like lots of years of experience, but this company that's their competitor, they hire young people with a lot of energy and a lot of strong opinions about, how things should be done combined with technical skills. You know what I mean? They haven't been around for 30 years. They've been around for 2 years, but like they've got a lot of energy and they've got a lot of education, So there is no one answer that says, you need to have this to get this job. That just doesn't exist. The only time when we approach that is in vocations that are regulated and licensed. Like you have to have a license to be in that role, like be a doctor or an engineer or something like that. You have to practice, you have to have a license in order to practice it, like accounting, in a lot of areas. That's the only place where you can get some kind of standardized requirements, And the other thing is, like, if you know about the hidden job market, that simply talking to the hiring manager negates all of this. You could score like 100% on these like sort of resume tests or whatever for like a role. But the person you're up against, they went and showed up and talked to the hiring manager. They developed a rapport with the hiring manager. They got along. Guess who gets hired? Them. You know what I mean? You might score 100%, but they still don't know you. You're just a resume on a table, figuratively. Prime is back. Prime says, hey, I started my new job and some stuff sounds off. It's a tech startup. When I get to the office, the boss said I don't need to handshake every time to make it official because they are unofficial, okay? And he didn't give me any introduction to the base of the project. And when I completed a task, he said, you did it, but it took you too much time. I would have done it in 30 minutes. What does that mean? He only helped at the end when I was struggling too much. But that thing is huge. I have never worked with that technology. Oh, applicant tracking system. Yeah, well, it sounds like a typical arrogant tech startup founder. Like I've worked with many. Yeah, does this company have any, like, I don't suppose I'd be interested to know, are they revenue positive? Do they have any customers or clients? Are they making money? Or is this just like startup phase, that they've borrowed money, and they're spending it on hiring people like you and doing a bunch of other things, Yeah, that's a pretty unprofessional attitude, even for a startup. You still need to treat people with respect. Now, what he said here, none of it is technically crossing the line, but it just seems a bit fishy. You would think that, if this is how they operate, they might have communicated that a little more clearly before you started, so you know what you're getting into, right? Startups are not like regular employers. It's not formal, and startup founders, like if this guy's the owner or he's running it, he's the CEO, they don't think like managers. They tend to, you see, they're entrepreneurs. Their interests are tied up in the performance of this fledgling company, and they expect everyone to think likewise when other people don't. If they're paying you like an hourly wage or a salary, you're not going to be thinking like that. You're going to be thinking like an employee. You're going to be punching a clock, essentially, one way or another. You're not going to be invested in like this actual work. You know what I mean? And I mean, if this is your first experience, Prime, with this person, it's not starting off on the right foot. Listen, what usually can help is like, there's no magic here, but what usually can help is if you go to your boss, this person, this startup founder or whatever, and say, listen, what's your expectations for me? I would like to understand what you want of me, and that will help me to do what I need to do. It'll help me meet your expectations if I know what your expectations are. I get that, we're not standing on ceremony. We're not super formal. I understand that. But like, specifically, what are you looking for me here? Because it seems like, we're not really starting off on the right foot. And I want this to be a success for both of us, So what would you have me do, Now, if this person says like, I would have done it in 30 minutes. Now, if you really feel confident that like, there's no way of speeding this up that you can think of that's practical. I would say like, listen, you made this comment that, you would have done it in 30 minutes. Like, okay, I feel like I really know what I'm doing here when it comes to this stuff. Can I ask, what would you do exactly to do this in 30 minutes? How would you approach it? I'm just curious, help me to understand, and I'll be happy to, if you can tell me what that is, I'll be happy to give it my best shot. Something like that, just like you're working with them, you're pushing back a little, but you're wanting to work with them, So if you're going to do this, I would do it like when they're not stressed out, like it's, all things being equal, Friday immediately after lunch is a good time, if you have the opportunity, go talk to them one-on-one in their office. If they got an office, close the door, and just talk to them there and say, can I just talk to you for a few minutes? Is that okay? Right. He only helped at the end. Okay. But the thing is, I've never worked with that technology. They are making good money from my analysis. We agreed formally that I am a junior, but I think he is expecting me to think like him. Yeah, that's because these people aren't professional managers. They never went to business school to learn how to manage. At least that's the guess I'm making based on what you're saying. Yeah, that's not how you manage people. That's not how you collaborate with people. You just expect everyone to be a mind reader and get it. Like, I understand they're looking for people that have the same general approach as them, the same kind of culture, but this is not how you instill that culture. The way you do it is you lead, you actually do stuff where people can see it. And then you say like, just how you saw me do it, that's what I want you to do. You do it like that, like what I just demonstrated, right? That's how you do it properly. So anyway, we could bitch about this person all day long, but it still could be a situation where you're just starting off on the wrong foot. It can work out. You guys can just get to know each other and understand each other and stuff, and it'll work out. But it sounds like it's kind of just off on the wrong foot. Rather than just kind of just say yes sir, and go away, I would like probe them a little for more information and say like, how you claim you can do this? I'd like to see you do it. I'd like to see you actually do this. If it's something you know about, you feel comfortable saying, I would actually do that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You read the situation the way you want, you know. But the thing is, if that's how they're treating you on, like, in the beginning, you can expect that to continue unless you do something about it, unless you ask for clarification or challenge them to put their money where their mouth is. You know, as long as they're not stressed out, as long as they're willing to do it and they're reasonable, it might be an interesting kind of thing to do, where either they show you can do it in half an hour, in which case if you're reasonable, you'll have more respect for them. Or they can't do it in half an hour and they have more respect for you because you called them on it. You know, you called BS on that. And then they won't push you around quite so much. They'll give you realistic expectations, you know. Anyway, I don't know if any of that was helpful, but like that's what I'd say about it. Also, he said, I can come and work whenever I feel like it, but I try to go there when he is and do my 8 hours. Yeah, you see, that's the other flip side of it. Right? They expect you to sell your soul to the company, right? You know, and now if that's not what you signed on for, then there's a conflict, right? You know, I used to mentor startup founders and, you know, this kind of thing, that whole world. You know, I was in that for a little while, and, you know, they had like, you know, what do you call it? Is it like co-space, co-workspace, whatever they call it, where you share office space? You know, they had like sort of government resources downtown where entrepreneurs can go and they can get office space for really cheap, and they have some resources there. And like, I'd be there on the weekend doing like, you know, sort of consulting and mentoring for various people. And like most, you know, cubicles are empty, you know, and it's like not even the founders are showing up. That was my experience. And it's like, if you're not even showing up, you know, it's all very easy to tell your employees you can show up, but is the boss showing up? You know, are they there on the weekends, like working Saturday and Sunday? You know, it's like they need to do that first before they tell their employees, like, oh yeah, you can come in, you can work as much as you want. You know, it's like, you know what I mean? And if they don't understand that, then they've got a lot to learn about managing. How could I guess he is a tech person? You know, lack of social skills, you'd have to be a tech person, you know, because if that's how you deal with people and you got nothing else, wow, that's pretty damn useless, you know? So yeah, he better pray that he's got some technical skills, because so far it really strikes me that he's got absolutely no management skills, and he's certainly not great at leading or influencing anybody, including his own employees. Nahad said, what's your opinion on employers ghosting applicants? For example, I had 2 video interviews that went well, and on the 3rd, nobody showed up, and I called the company and nobody got back to me. Well, that's a little more than ghosting. Like if they called you in for an interview and you showed up, but they weren't there, I've never even heard of that. That's like some high level, you know, taking ghosting to the next level of existence. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's weird. Okay, so here's the deal for ghosting. Okay, this is what I think about it anyway. You guys can tell me if you agree or not. Okay, now most other areas of business, right? People like to talk to each other. And the way a lot of business conversations go, it's similar to like conversations at parties and get together where, you know, you talk to somebody that you don't really know, you know, you might be acquaintances or whatever, and you're like, hey, you know, we should do that sometime, right? Yeah, you know, you come by and I'll set you up with this, you know, whatever, right? And like 95% of the time, it's all just empty talk. You never end up doing anything together. You never end up talking to each other after the end of this conversation, like for the rest of your lives, you know, it's just talk, right? So in a way, it's like kind of like ghosting, where they say, yeah, we should do something. You know, it's like, if you give me a call next week, sure, I'll come with you and we'll go and do this thing like we were talking about, right? The person doesn't call, right? The difference is that, in my experience, is that people at that level in those circles, they understand the protocol, right? The protocol is that you're going to say things that are very polite. Maybe you have an intention of following up with that suggestion or that offer, but most people don't. It's a flattering kind of thing to say. You guys kind of bond over it. You get along. You have a pleasant conversation, and it's not that you're like, you're thinking the whole time, I'm never going to do that. I hate their guts, but I'm telling them that I like them. It's not like that. It's that you're open to it, but time is limited, like you've got a lot of other things you're doing. Maybe if the opportunity presents itself, you might do it, but you're probably not going to act on it, right? You never know. So you say, yeah, we should do it, right? Now, that's just kind of what everybody understands in those circles. The problem is that when you take some of that kind of interaction, you bring it down level to like recruiters and young people that have just come out of school. You just came out of trade school, you just came out of university or college, and a recruiter says, well, thanks very much, like that's really good. I appreciate you sending me your application. We'll be in touch. The difference is that the job seeker doesn't understand that we'll be in touch is just this friendly, way of closing a conversation. And the etiquette is that, like, it doesn't literally mean I'll be in touch with you. It means that, well, thank you for this. Maybe we'll do something in the future. Maybe we won't. We'll see where it goes. That's the understanding. So that's like the language they're speaking, right? The problem is the way job seekers understand, they don't pick up on that meaning, right? So for example, if I send a proposal to you and I follow up maybe once to make sure that you received it, or I know that you received it, but then I don't hear back, how do you understand the situation? Well, I know that means that, well, you didn't go for it, right? Most situations, it means you didn't go for it. Like, if I'm sending it to someone that I've already established a communication channel, they already know who I am, they're already expecting to hear from me, maybe we've communicated before, right? And I send them a proposal or a suggestion or whatever, and I don't hear back, that's a no. That's what the language means. It's a no, right? I've already done a sort of radio check with them. I already know that they can receive my thing and they can respond back and they know who I am, but they didn't. That's what it means, right? Now, obviously, this is a very idealized case. If it's something very important, you would follow up. You'd say you leave a voicemail, or you mention it, and they're saying like, yeah, we're thinking about it, right? But you don't hear anything back. The language is it's a no. If it was a yes, they would have responded to me with a yes and said, yes, let's do this. How are you for like tomorrow? Can we do this tomorrow? Something like that. That's what a yes would look like. This is not that, therefore it's a no, okay? So that's what's going on behind a lot of ghosting, right? The other thing that's also going on behind the scenes is that it's debatable, but you could argue that recruiters, it can be impractical for them to respond to everybody that applied, right? I don't know if I'm really defending that, but you might be able to argue that. It's kind of hard to argue it if it's like it goes into an automated system and you didn't get an automated reply. You know what I mean? But, you know what I mean? You see, if they're getting 800 applicants for the average job or whatever it is in the hundreds, by definition, how many interviews are you taking from like 800 applicants? You're maybe taking 10 at the most, usually, right? Usually, traditionally, it used to be around 6 that you'd interview. So I would say maybe these days, because you can do some remotely, 10, So that means that 790 people should get a response with a no. You know what I mean? And 10 will get a response with yes, let's set up an interview. Now, the recruiter is only one person, right? They have to set up 10 interviews. Also, this is not the only job that they're usually recruiting for at the same time. So they have to set up 10 interviews. That means they have to get in touch with people. They have to call back repeatedly, whatever, coordinate the whole thing, coordinate it, not just with the candidates, but with the people internal to the employer. You need to get the hiring manager in there, maybe some other people. You have to juggle everything, right? Are you going to tack on your task list, respond to 790 people with a no? What is the benefit of that? First of all, there is no benefit. Like, does that make your job any more effective or quicker? No. It has absolutely no positive effect on you accomplishing your goal of filling those positions. So it's really low priority. And then you combine that with maybe a lack of desire or a lack of tech skill, and they can't set up their ATS system to send an automated message, right? Because they're too incompetent to do that, or they don't care, right? And then they're overworked. They're getting all this stuff piled on top of them. So it really makes it unlikely that they're going to send out those responses to everyone that didn't get picked, right? And tell them explicitly, sorry, it's a no. That's what's going on behind the scenes. So when the candidate doesn't get a yes, but they get something other than a yes, but it doesn't look very promising, it's taking forever, 99% of the time that means no. I hate to say it. Like, I hate to be the messenger of bad news, but that's what it means. This is the language they're using, It's the same in sales, You like to contact people with good news. You don't like to contact people with bad news. So as a result, the bad news tends not to get communicated, right? Especially when communicating that bad news doesn't assist you in accomplishing your goals that you have to do as an employee, right? If you work as a recruiter or something, or a salesperson, whatever we're talking about. So that's what's going on. So it's not personal, okay? It could be for reasons of incompetence, but it's not like this personal thing that they're trying to be confusing. The other thing is that there's also a lot of pressure on recruiters not to disclose why you were rejected. And when you tell people they're rejected, sometimes it triggers, now people want to call back the recruiter and say, why didn't you hire me? So they don't want that. That's even more stuff they got to deal with. And it's also negative attention. Nobody likes that. So, you know what I mean? You combine all those things together and that's what's going on. So that's why I recommend when you're doing a job search, always be looking forward. Apply to the jobs you can, pursue as many opportunities as you can, pursue as many leads as you can. Keep looking forward. Now, if somebody calls you back and wants to talk to you, great, you'll entertain that. But unless somebody is calling and wanting to talk to you, don't stop and look back and wonder what's happening with these people. You'll never be able to understand what's going on their end. And a lot of times it's not nearly as negative as you think it is, right? Anyway, I don't know if that was any help, but that was the whole explanation of ghosting thing. I don't know where we were in this discussion. That was Nihad that asked that. Okay, so it's not personal, Nihad. If you followed up once, twice, do it by voicemail. Do it by phone. Okay? If you're the type of person that's scared of going near a phone, don't be really try and get over it. Just say, listen, hi, it's Nihad. I'm just following up to see if there was any new information with my application for this. I put it in last week. I was just wondering if there's any news on that or if I can expect anything else from you guys. That's all. Have yourself a great day. Something like that. That's all you can do. Now, if you've done that and you still don't hear anything, it's a no, or at least it's a no for now. Okay? Keep moving. Always be looking at the next thing, because not only is that more effective for you getting hired sooner, it's also better for your mental health. You're dealing with opportunities that could work out. It's more enjoyable dealing with that than stressing about things that don't seem to be working out. You know what I mean? Like, it's not good to dwell on that stuff and beat yourself up over it. It's you have no control over that, you know? Hopefully that makes sense. Prime says, should I work overtime for free? I think he's expecting me to do it, and he also asked me a question on technology from today. I can't answer that for you, Prime. Just remember that there are labor laws in wherever you are in the world. You know, employers are not allowed to demand that you work for them and not pay you properly. There are minimum wage laws. There's things in place that prevent employers from doing this. And it's a common thing for certain underhanded employers or employers that are like really strapped for cash to try and persuade you to go along with these things that are essentially illegal. So working a couple hours overtime for free is not the end of the world. It depends how you're paid, first of all. If you're a salaried employee, there's not really any such thing as overtime. The only thing is like what they're expecting from you to earn your salary. You know what I mean? And if it doesn't work for you, unfortunately, I got to say, you got to walk away if it doesn't work for you. But if you're an hourly employee, you know, and that's your contract with this company, depending where you are in the world, usually it's illegal to work overtime for free, like to put in all these extra hours officially and not be paid for it. That's violating minimum wage laws and things like that. You know what I mean? They like to pressure you into thinking you must do it and you have to do it and you should want to do it to get you to voluntarily do it. But what they're actually doing is illegal. Now, don't take my word on any of this. Don't act on like my opinion. In your region, there are labor laws, and there's also a branch of the government that polices the labor laws. It's called different things in different countries, right? But in your city, there will be a department of the government, whether it's the municipal government or the state level, provincial level government, or the federal government, that polices the labor laws depending on where the labor laws are at, or what level of government the labor laws are done. And usually they have like a hotline, like a 1-800 number, or something like that, like a free telephone number you can call. And you don't have to give your name. You don't have to identify yourself. If you have any kind of question of like, what is allowed and what's not allowed by law, they can interpret the law for you. They can say, well, it says here, in section 4, paragraph 5, subsection 2, minimum wage says this is what constitutes an hour, and this is the official policy on what employers are allowed to do for overtime. Now, if you were working there for a long time and it's going great and they ask an hour here, an hour there, it's not a big deal. Fair enough. But it seems like you're just starting out and already there's these kind of weird issues cropping up. So that doesn't look great. It might not be the end of the world, but it just, so I can't tell you how to handle it, but those are some issues surrounding this. A common problem in organizations is like bosses that care about perception. They care about optics. They want to see that you're working. They want to, because it's not a very good way of like running things, but it is an element of human nature. Like, if they always see you working, then they're going to conclude, oh, you're a hardworking employee. If they are never around when you're working and then consequently they don't see you working, they're going to conclude that, you're not that good of a worker. It's all about psychology and perception. It's not about anything real, and they're going to treat you and they're going to regard you like that. And depending on how out of hand that gets, it's a game you might not want to play. So, what I think is the way to resolve all this stuff is to go have some one-on-one conversations with your boss. You need to understand them. You need to get some guidance on the expectations and what they're expecting of you, and then you need to decide if you can deliver in it and it makes sense for you to do it, or how to do it. Nihat says, thanks, that gives me good perspective. Okay, good. Alex says, what to do if line leader says there is no space for pallets with electronic circuit boards and components to be mixed up and in clear spaces with an obvious piece of paper. Sorry, you lost me, Alex. Alex, try to limit your sentences to like about 10 words. That's just a tip. Break everything into like one thought per sentence and make short sentences. Then it's clear. And then even if the grammar is kind of messed up, which it is, people can still understand exactly what you're saying. Every time I say that to him, he says it can't be done because of space. The problem causes issues, being inefficient, especially when you feed the line. Yeah, I mean, I can't really comment on this, something like that specific about some job. I'm not sure. Sorry, Alex. If you want to rephrase that and just say, they claim this, it's clearly not true. I've actually seen it. They haven't, but they insist they're right. How do I deal with it? Like if you want to reframe it a little, I'll be happy to answer that. Anyway, there are 17 people here. If you guys have any questions for me that I can help you out with, ask them now. I'll probably be signing off soon. We were kind of talking about how hiring is broken. If you have any thoughts on that, or you have any questions for me, I can help you with. Alex says, basically, the company doesn't offer ways to be more efficient. Okay, here's what I would say about that, Alex. Okay, listen. A lot of times, you're absolutely right. And the reason for it is because of incompetence. Okay, we see a lot of that, right? So that is a thing. And if that's what you're seeing, like what they're asking doesn't make sense, and they're very rigid and they're inflexible and they want it done this way, and they're making you do something that like is stupid. Like you should be able to do it a lot simpler and a lot easier than this. You know what I mean? But they tie your hands so you can't do it that way. Here's what I would say. Everybody is going to have like things like that they see in their job, no matter what your job is. Okay, everyone does. Now, the perspective from the other side of the table, okay, that I can give you is, and this is assuming that it isn't just pure incompetence. Is what's leading to this, right? Is that a lot of times there are constraints on the business and upon their operations that you don't see. You don't see how they, like what's tying their hands to do it in a more efficient way. Okay? But they are there, I assure you. Okay? Either a lack of money or, there's some kind of standard that they have to conform to. It could be a safety standard. It could be some other type of regulatory standard. It could be, something that's not really a standard. It's like a historical thing. They tried it that way that you're proposing in the past, and they did try it that way, and they ran into this other problem that became a big deal. They did it that way. Somebody went too fast. They slipped. They sprained their back. And then the company got hit with the big like workers' compensation thing. Like, I don't know, whatever. I'm just making this up off the top of my head. So it's like they tried it that way and they ran into problems. And this happened before you started with the company. So you didn't see any of this, right? But that's what's in their mind when like you're saying, we should do it this way, right? Now, some of those are legitimate and some of them aren't, okay? But what I'm saying is that you don't see the full picture sometimes. And sometimes there's more to the problem than what you see, okay? It could be a thing like, if we make changes in your area and make things more efficient, the people from this other department are going to see that and they're going to complain and they're going to say, hey, if they get to get like an overhaul on their operation that makes it more efficient for them, why don't we get that too? We demand that you do the same thing here. And that would be too disruptive or be too expensive or some problem, right? You see, there's stuff going on behind the scenes that sometimes tie people's hands that you don't see as a worker, okay? And I've been there. I've been the worker, and then I've been the manager, like the supervisor, and then I've been the boss. So, there's different perspectives on this. Now, I don't know which of these is responsible for this particular thing you're talking about. It could be any of them. It could be legitimate, or it could not be. There's just more to it that you're not seeing. But have an open mind, okay? That's what the best employees do, like, the ones that really end up going places. Like, give them the benefit of the doubt, and then see if you can learn the reason why it's not being done the way you think it should be done. Have a one-on-one talk with your boss, and don't accuse them of anything or say like, we should be doing it like this. Say, I'm just curious, like maybe there's something that's preventing us from doing it that way. Do you know what it was? I'd be interested to learn if there was something that maybe I'm not seeing, and that's how you learn. And that's how you really go, okay, I get it now. That makes sense. Anyway, that's probably not very helpful, but Avery says, ideas to get hired with a background. What does that mean? Asking for a friend. 7 to 10 years for background checks has dried up any jobs for him, and he is stuck in one that he is constantly harassed over it. I don't fully understand, but I would say hidden job market, because you get hired not because of your background or your resume or anything you've done in the past. You get hired because, number one, you're the only one that showed up, and number two, you're hired for what you demonstrated. You demonstrated that you're enthusiastic about the job. You want the job. That's why you show up. You wouldn't show up for a job that you don't want, you don't care about. Then you got along with the hiring manager, right? The person who's going to be your boss. You said, they had an interaction with you. They had a conversation with you, and they liked you. You clicked. You have the same opinions, same kind of communication style. You would have to, in this job, you'd be working with them every day, and getting along with each other and being on the same page with them is very important. And they've seen that. You're on the same page with them. They like you, and you don't mind them, right? And on top of it, when you talk about the job itself, they can see that you know your stuff, right? There's no question of like, you don't know how to do the job, because you just had a conversation about it, and it's clear that you know what you're talking about, right? So you're not hired for your background, like showing a resume or showing references or whatever. You're hired because of who you are and what they saw. You demonstrated the things that they hire you for. You know what I mean? It's a totally different thing. So I would try that approach. I don't fully understand the problem or the situation here, but it seems like the solution would be more in that direction. Alex says, okay, Alex was, okay, this guy. So they expect to bring order and chaos and not every production to not have his own palette. I have an open mind and try to understand the line leader, but me bringing order and not seeing order. It sounds like you really don't have an open mind, Alex. I know you're saying you do, but you're finding fault with the very concept before even, wanting to learn anymore. So listen, maybe you're right. I don't know. I mean, I'm not there. You could well be right, but unless you think you're the very first person that's ever noticed that at that company or has suggested it, maybe you are. I'm not sure. Anyway, it doesn't affect the principle that I told you about. That principle still holds. Gus says it was a white collar job at a major. Okay, Gus is, this is a new person. It was a white collar job at a major auto supplier, senior accountant manager. Okay, whatever that means. What are we talking about, Gus? Was there an earlier part to that I'm missing? I can't see it. Maybe I'm not seeing it or something. Anyway, Listen, it's been an hour. I'm probably going to sign off. I'll sign off in 30 seconds. If you have any like burning questions, like ask them now. Yeah, I'm not seeing it, Gus. This thing you just said that starts with "it was a white collar job." That's the first post that I have showing up here. Now, if it's my technology letting me down, I fully can believe that. This thing is crap. I'm using Streamlabs OBS, and it's not really working. Yeah, there's nothing above Alex. Sorry. I'm sure it's there for you, and I'm sure you wrote it. Just unfortunately, it's not showing up here. I can see when you say read up, and I can see when you say just above Alex. Maybe try pasting it again, and I'll do my best if I get that. Alex says, I can understand that they did it in the past and it didn't work, so they added this method. Thanks, I've thought this way too, because it's not the whole picture. Yeah, a lot of stupidity that happens in organizations. Like, there's a lot of things that you look around, you see, that just doesn't make any sense, right? And usually it's the product of different people who see different parts of the process, complaining about a problem they're having, the solution to which was something that solved their problem, but unbeknownst to them, created a whole bunch of other problems in other areas, right? So to them, it seemed like a perfect solution, but if you look at the organization as a whole, it just created all kinds of stupidity. It ended up changing things that didn't need to be changed into something that didn't make any sense because the solution was never designed for this particular application over here. It also is a product of people's biases, people's silly opinions, cost-cutting measures, a lack of budget, a lack of financial resources to buy the equipment that would be the right tool for the job or the right solution for the problem. You know what I mean? It's like doing things on the cheap and then just scaling it up, and then you get to the point where it's like really stupid and it's really not what you would do. You know what I mean? So there's all kinds of things that can lead to that, right? And you see this all the time. Don't be surprised when you see this. That's pretty much the norm for a lot of organizations, And it's a lot more of a complex problem than you realize to like try and solve all that stuff, especially when you don't have like $1 million to play with, or highly resourceful, highly motivated people that have the time to spend on it. You know what I mean? It's very easy to criticize. It's harder to actually fix because no matter what you do, somebody's upset, People don't like change, any change. You could change it to something that worked amazing and people would still complain. They would still claim the old system is better, That's what I've learned. Okay, I'm going to just answer this next one here with Remdog, and then I've got to get rolling, unfortunately. But first of all, thank you for everyone who was here. I'm sorry to Gus that apparently we had some technical problems. If you can put your thing in the comments, maybe I'll see if I can. Oh, here we go. We got a note from Gus. So, okay, so I'll answer these here, and then that'll be it. Remdog says, is it considered rude to reach out to hiring managers directly via LinkedIn to set up a quick chat about an open role on their team? Absolutely not. However, it depends on how you do it. You could make it very rude, You could act really arrogant. You could like demand a bunch of things. That's the thing. Like you're reaching out to somebody, right? It's like the equivalent of you going up to someone that you don't know on the street, right? Now, if you start talking all about yourself, they're probably not going to be into it. They're probably going to be upset that like, who is this person and why do you think I care about some random thing that you've got? I don't, If you come up to them and you ask, like you demand something, that's probably going to get instantly rejected in a very angry way. If you ask for something, they're probably, because they don't know you, they're probably not going to be inclined to give you what you're asking for, to do anything for you, do extra work for you or whatever, stuff like that. I even get that on this channel. Like I get people that like ask me questions in the comments I usually don't respond in comments because it's very time consuming to type out your answer. But occasionally, once in a blue moon, I'll do it. And I answer the question. And then my big reward is that they never come back and they never read the answer or they never respond, all three. And it's like, I've been burned on that a few times. That reinforces not wanting to answer things, So it depends how you do it, okay? That's a whole big thing to explain. It's something I cover in this course, by the way. It's the gateway to unearthing all kinds of job opportunities if you know how to do it. It's a skill you can learn like any other, but you got to learn about like communication, When a stranger emails you, how inclined are you to do what they ask? Let me ask that. What would it take them to say to get you to actually do the thing that they're asking for? Rimdog says, also great channel. Thank you for everything you do in the community. Your advice really helped me securing previous roles. Well, thank you, Rimdog. I'm at a bit of a pivotal crossroads here on my YouTube channel. I've gotten to 500,000 subscribers. I haven't upgraded my technology in many years. I started this with what I just had kind of lying around my office in my house, and I did it solo. So no editors, no other people involved. It's all completely homespun. In the next little bit, I'm going to be doing what pretty much every other YouTuber does, and they get people on their team, and it's more of a team effort. I'm right at that crossroads that, I'm going to be making some changes. But thank you for that. I appreciate it. And it's great to know that it's having an effect. So that's great to hear. Thank you for saying so. It's very kind of you. Gus says, retired but want to work part-time, age 69 versus 35 years, great experience. Full-time is too much stress. Part-time is what I'm pursuing. $60 hour salary as senior sales account manager. Okay, so that was your story. And you said it was a white-collar job at a major auto supplier, senior manager. Okay. Sales account manager. Okay. Good. Do you have a question in there? Like you're describing what you have and what you want and what you've done. Is there any question? Let me know. Alex says, imagine that I do material operator, then operator on the two machines. That is a younger colleague coming to fast. Sure. Yeah, I can't say either way. Okay. I have to get rolling. Thanks, everybody. You guys are awesome. Check out that course. If you're like lost and you want to know how to go about getting a job, that's where I put all my advice, including a lot of things I haven't shared publicly on my free videos. If you're looking to improve your communication skills, check out that course. When I went from a supervisor to a CEO over many years, and I learned about communication skills along that journey, I put all of that stuff into that course. Okay, there's a lot of things you got to tack on to go from a supervisor to a CEO. People management skills, financial skills, all this kind of stuff, communication skills. So for all the communication skill stuff, they went into, I can just do this. I don't need to do this. It's backwards though. So you could just check out that course. That's where I put all that stuff. If you're interested in learning that, it's not really for how to get a job. It's more for like how to be seen as someone that should be promoted. And it gives you at least the communication skills to be able to be seen as a contender for higher level positions. That's what that is. So check that out if you're interested. All of these, they're linked in the description box under this live stream. I will be back live streaming on Friday, so you can catch me then. Are you talking about, okay, Gus, I just see you finally kind of asked the question, how to overcome the age to get hired. You mean like age bias or age discrimination? You can't overcome it. People have their own opinions, you know what I mean? And you can never prove that that's the reason why they didn't hire you because it's all inside their head. All you know is that they didn't hire you. But I can tell you one person who's not going to care that you're 69 and they're not going to hold that against you. In fact, they might even like the fact that you're 69 it's another 69-year-old, okay? So go to places, apply to places where the hiring manager is much closer to your age and not some 22-year-old wonder, okay? That's probably going to make all kinds of assumptions about you, right? Okay? You go there, or instead of talking to whatever position, like the person in that position, talk to their boss, talk to the owner of the company, talk to the senior manager of the company, okay? They will probably be a lot closer to your age than 22. You know what I mean? They'll probably see your ability, much more than some younger person might, if that's the issue you're facing. You know what I'm saying? So thanks to things like LinkedIn, you could even look at individuals. You can see the individuals at different organizations. You can see inside of the organizations. So that can be a tool to navigate that stuff also, so you're not totally jumping blind. Okay? Anyway, I got to go. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to Helicopter. See you Friday. And take care of yourselves. I wish you the absolute best of luck.